Thank you for watching the Sustainability Chat. The Sustainability Institute's free programming is only available thanks to our generous members and supporters. If you find what we do meaningful, please consider becoming a member today by heading to our website, sustaininstitute.com. Once there, you can find more information by clicking the Become a Member or Donate button at the top of your screen. Membership support at any level is greatly appreciated, and your contribution is tax deductible. We especially want to thank our highest tier members, including our committed advocates and cheering champions. Thank you. Now on to today's Sustainability Chat with Citizens Climate Lobby.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Sustainability Chats brought to you by the Sustainability Institute here in La Crosse, Wisconsin. My name is Casey Meehan. I'm the Director of Sustainability and Resilience at Western Technical College. But in that role, I also play a part in directing the work for the Sustainability Institute. If you're not familiar with the Sustainability Institute and what we do, we are on a mission to catalyze sustainable action in the Seven Rivers region. And we do this by educating about local issues and solutions, by advocating for climate action, by connecting like-minded organizations and people to each other, and finally by inspiring a positive vision for a sustainable future. And at the Sustainability Institute, we frame a lot of what we work on using what's called the Good Life Goals. Now, the Good Life Goals are based on the UN Sustainable Development Goals, which is a framework of 17 interconnected goals that really help us think more holistically about sustainability as a pathway to help us and our communities thrive. That's really what sustainability is all about, is thriving. Now, like I said, these 17 goals are interconnected. So working on one can really help advance the projects and all the other goals. But today, we're really calling out goal number 13, which is acting on climate. And there are so many things that we can do individually and as organizations and as municipalities and governments to act on climate, learning about climate solutions, calling for more renewable energy in our communities, eating more plants, cutting down on the meat that we eat, walking and cycling rather than driving, and demanding that our leaders take bold climate action today. And that's really where our guests today come in. So we have folks from Citizens Climate Lobby, which is an organization that's acting on climate change by directly engaging with the democratic process. So one thing that CCL or Citizens Climate Lobby members do is lobby our elected officials at all levels, but even the highest levels of our federal government. But that is not all that they do. So today we have two guests with us. We have Larry Slesnikow, who is the co-leader of the La Crosse chapter of Citizens Climate Lobby. And he's going to be telling us a little bit about what Citizens Climate Lobby does, and then what the local chapter is up to and how you can get involved. And we're also really lucky to be joined by Tamara Staton, who is the Education and Resilience Coordinator and the Greater Pacific Northwest Regional Director of Citizens Climate Lobby. So she's going to be helping us sort of think about the big picture of CCL and what they're up to on a national scale. So with that, I want to turn it over to Larry, who again is going to talk to us a little bit about what's happening here locally and what CCL is really all about. Then we'll have Tamara, invite Tamara in for a little bit, and then we'll have just a little bit of a discussion. So Larry, thank you so much for joining us. Let me stop sharing my screen and take it away.
Well, thank you so much, Casey and Carrie, for the invitation to the Sustainability Institute chats to talk a little bit about Citizens Climate Lobby. I do have a few slides. Hopefully technology favors me in doing this. So hopefully everyone can see this.
Yep, it looks good, Larry.
Perfect. So again, this is a little bit of an introduction about Citizens Climate Lobby. I feel to really understand the scope of Citizens Climate Lobby, not only on our local level, but nationally, it really helps to have a little bit about the history. So I'm going to move on here. So about how I got involved and interested in climate change, I'm not sure. I date myself in looking back at 1988, but that was a very much a keystone event when James Hansen, pictured here in the upper left, a climate scientist for NASA, came before the Senate and talked about global warming, and that they were quite sure that adding carbon emissions to the atmosphere was actually warming our planet. Shortly after that, Bill McKibben came out with the first true book about climate change, especially aimed at a lay reader, called The End of Nature. And that was a book that I saw early on and got a chance to read. I also got a chance to meet Bill McKibben. People might remember An Inconvenient Truth, the documentary with Al Gore, who had been going around and doing presentations about global warming. And also the book by James Hansen, initially Storms of My Grandchildren, was another one that became quite popular, because here the gentleman that sort of broke the news about climate change to the Congress had actually written a book about it because he was quite concerned about his grandchildren and the effects that climate change would have in the future. This is a section of what he had prepared for Congress, and I'll just read this. I would like to draw three main conclusions. Number one, the Earth is warmer in 1988 than at any time in the history of instrumental measurements. Number two, the global warming is now large enough that we can ascribe with a high degree of confidence a cause and effect relationship to the greenhouse effect. And number three, our computer climate simulations indicate that the greenhouse effect is already large enough to begin to affect the probability of extreme events such as summer heat waves. And just a reminder, this was 36 years ago. Pretty foretelling, since summer heat waves is something that he mentioned at that time, and we're seeing this globally on a regular basis now. CCL was started by Marshall Saunders. Now, unfortunately, Marshall Saunders passed away a few years ago, but he was the gentleman that got the ball rolling for Citizens Climate Lobby. He was an amazing individual. Marshall was a volunteer for an organization called Results, working for hunger and poverty. And Marshall and his family came from some wealth, so he had some funding to work with, and he got involved in micro lending in Mexico. And people may be familiar with this idea where you lend small amounts of money to individuals, perhaps in developing countries, where they use that money to create their own small businesses. In 2006, he saw Al Gore's An Inconvenient Truth, and that was a changing experience for him. He began giving talks to people about reducing their carbon footprints. You know, what can we do as individuals to try to make an impression on carbon emissions? But he realized that a federal policy was what really was needed to affect the fossil fuel industry. He started giving presentations and trying to come up with ideas. You know, what could we do? What kind of approach could we have when it comes to actually effectively instituting climate change or climate legislation? And at one of his presentations, and this story, I've heard this multiple times, and when he tells it, it's just eye-opening. He said he was at a senior center and talking, and a woman asked, well, what should we do? And he said, well, what's needed is thousands of ordinary people organized, lobbying their members of Congress with one voice, one message, and lobbying in a relentless, unstoppable, yet friendly and respectful way. And she said, why don't you do that? So we started the first CCL chapter in 2007. This is a short video of Marshall Saunders talking about how we approach this, and that we are the ones that are going to make the change.
We are building an army, a peaceful army. And our weapons are truth and nonviolence, and as we keep saying over again, respect and admiration for those who would oppose us. You and I are engaged in a battle for all of life. All of life. Not just humankind, but for all of life. I don't see anybody else coming. You know, when you get in a dire situation, the cavalry shows up, right? Well, I'm sure of it, you are the cavalry. We are the cavalry. And we're going to win. And there's no choice about it. There's no choice. We're going to win.
And you saw a number of people gathered on the steps of the Capitol. Those are the folks that were, each June go to lobby Congress. That was taken a few years ago. The number of people now that are out there on the steps of Capitol are significantly greater. So it is an impressive group when the group photo gets together for, to go ahead and lobby just prior to lobbying Congress. CCL has core values. And this is also one of the things that really interested me and drew me to CCL. They are focused on solving climate change. There are a number of other environmental organizations that are working and doing great work, but many times they're in different areas doing different things. This was very, very focused. When I got involved in Citizens Climate Lobby, and we'll touch base on this in a minute, the whole focus was putting a fee on carbon and getting that back as a dividend to the American people. So it was one true focus. Optimism, turn our concern about climate change into action. That's always been a concern, that people can easily get depressed or feel that there's nothing they can do to significantly change the situation, whereas CCL's approach is you have to be optimistic and you have to turn that optimism into action. Diversity empowers everyone in exercising their personal and political power, regardless of race, ethnicity, nationality, gender, sexual orientation, age, religion, ability, or political affiliation. CCL is open to anyone, regardless. The diversity, we're hearing more and more, having that diversity really improves whatever you're working on. Diverse opinions, diverse skills, all of those things come into play. Relationships, another thing that, especially in working with legislators, whether they're local, state, or national, is building that relationship with your legislators and doing that through appreciation, gratitude, and respect. CCL doesn't come in and start haranguing a legislator about not being involved or not being involved enough. They work to build a relationship. They work to try to find common ground. They work to provide resources and answer questions, not only for a legislator, but also for their staff. And they do that with respect. Integrity in the approach is thoughtful and thorough. When CCL says members or a lobby team or whomever says that they're going to do something, they do it. It's not something that they put words out and don't follow through. And it's very thoughtful about how they approach it. They don't want to try to inundate a legislator or their staff with too many questions or too many requests. They try to understand and respect their time and all the things that they have to do, and yet be very thorough in what they supply or thorough in when they actually come to lobby, and do that thoughtfully and carefully. It's nonpartisan. CCL is nonpartisan. It's open to anyone who's serious about climate change, whether they're conservative, liberal, independent, whatever. It's open. If you want to work to solve climate change, CCL wants to work with you. And also your personal power. We use our voices to be heard in the democracy. CCL has currently several different focuses. Initially, like I said, it was putting a carbon fee and dividend in place. And there's a short video to talk about that. And now there's been a few others added, and we'll discuss that in a minute. But I'll go ahead and play this video for you.
What is a carbon fee and dividend? And how does it help solve climate change? Burning fossil fuels causes carbon pollution, which traps heat and warms our planet to dangerous levels. To stabilize our climate, we need to stop carbon pollution. How? By changing the rules to the game. Right now, carbon pollution is free for everyone. With a carbon fee and dividend, fossil fuel companies pay a fee when they pollute the air. Since most companies like saving money, they'll change their behavior to avoid the carbon fee. They will become more energy efficient or clean up their act with cleaner energy. With this policy, our carbon pollution goes down while green goods and services go mainstream. Costs for some things will go up, but for many purchases, we'll be able to substitute a greener choice. And as businesses move to greener products, they'll provide us with more affordable green options. For example, car companies will shift to producing affordable electric cars. And power companies will replace fossil fuels with clean energy. And remember that carbon fee? The money collected from fossil fuel companies goes to every American as a monthly dividend or carbon cashback. People can spend the monthly cashback however they want to, helping everyone afford the transition to green energy. When we stop burning fossil fuels, our air will be clean, our health will improve, and our climate will stabilize. All we need is a price on carbon, with the money given back to the people. Learn how you can support putting a price on carbon at cclusa.org.
So hopefully the video outlines the idea of a carbon fee and dividend. There was always the concern, the idea, and how that worked. I'll try to explain this quickly, is that there would be a fee placed on carbon, whether it's oil, gas, coal, or whether it's fossil fuels being imported into the country. And we know what the amount of carbon dioxide that's released by all of these different fuels. So a certain percentage per ton would be added that would be progressively increased over the years. That money again would be collected and given back to the American people. So it wouldn't be a tax as such where the money is collected by the government and spent. This money would be returned to the US citizens so they could use it, whether to weatherize their home, to electrify. And it was found through studies that those of lower income status would actually do better because they don't use fossil fuels to the extent that those that are more wealthy, that have larger RVs or homes or whatever. So it would actually be a benefit for those with low income. But it was found about the time of the 2016 election that while prior to that, we were getting better and better and support for a carbon fee and dividend, unfortunately, after that, that support sort of faded away. That's when CCL got involved in trying to figure out what are a few other things we can work on in addition to carbon fee and dividend. One of those was supporting healthy forests. And I think in La Crosse, we're seeing that in a regular basis. The city now is working to improve our trees downtown because we know that trees can lower temperature. There's the concern of heat islands where there's a lot of concrete and heat builds up. So we're trying to moderate that and mitigate some of that heat. It also helps support emissions reduction goals. It saves lives in cities on hot days. It reduces the citywide grid strain, and it's green is just very important for communities. Another one is reducing carbon pollution with a building electrification and efficiency. And that's one thing currently that CCL is working on a lot because of the Inflation Reduction Act that was passed. Quite a bit of money is available now to help electrify your home via heat pumps for inductions or electric stoves, other things. And that helps clean the air inside as well as outside, and it creates jobs. And another one is reforming the clean energy permitting process. For us to try to get clean energy to where we need it, we have to improve our grid, and to do that, many times there has to be additional power lines or infrastructure installed. That can be very time consuming. So CCL is working to try to improve that situation, not by reducing the concern of citizens and having that opportunity to weigh in on whether a transmission line or piece of infrastructure is in place, but trying to make sure that it moves forward more readily if possible, so we can try to make this transition more quickly. And it would also improve the air quality in disadvantaged communities. A little bit about Citizens Climate Lobby itself. There are currently 524 CCL chapters, not only in the United States, but worldwide, and nearly 200,000 supporters. There are monthly international meetings with a guest speaker in action. So every month, CCL will have a meeting. They'll bring in a guest speaker related to some aspect of climate change. It could be the science, it could be the economics, it could be the politics. And there are also monthly actions that chapters can use moving forward. It might be contacting your legislators about a particular bill. It might be tabling at events, something like Earth Day, preparing so that you can go to an Earth Day event and provide materials, answer questions, get people involved in joining your chapter. There are lots of training opportunities. And I have a slide, I think, after this just to show on our CCL community site how much material CCL has put forward so that volunteers know how to do so many different things, whether you want to write a letter to the editor, whether you want to table, whether you want to be part of a lobby group. That information is made available through video, through talk, through live webinars and recordings of webinars. There are also national and regional conferences. These are several that are listed. There's a virtual conference coming up in September. Our Great Lakes Regional Conference. Yes, the United States is divided up into regions when it comes to CCL chapters. Ours from Wisconsin is the Great Lakes region, and there will be a regional conference in October in Rockford, Illinois. There's also going to be a fall virtual conference in December. There's a conservative conference coming next March, and then each June in Washington, D.C., there is a conference in lobbying, and that date has not been set for next year, but that will be coming forward next June. These are a couple of screen captures of the menus just from our CCL community, and hopefully you get an idea of the resources. The top one shows training topics and resources available. You can see everything from preparing your lobby days to organizing your group, fact sheets, lobby or tabling materials. The one below is about tools. How do you call Congress? How do you write a letter to the editor? How do you update your chapter or your information? Currently, CCL has a partnership, at least for our Wisconsin CCL chapters, with the Environmental Voter Project. The Environmental Voter Project, the executive director has spoken several times to CCL on conference international calls. But what they found is that they estimate that 8 million environmentalists, they're part of an environmental group or multiple organizations, but they did not vote in the 2020 presidential election, and over 13 million skipped the 2022 midterms. So they can tell if you voted or not. They cannot tell who you voted for. But if you did not vote and you're also a member of various organizations, and the Environmental Voter Project is trying to get those folks to vote so that they hopefully will influence not only, acts or bills for certain things, but also definitely for climate change. And they anticipate that over almost 2 million non-voting, seldom voting environmentalists, they've helped turn them into consistent voters. And again, Wisconsin CCL Wisconsin CCL chapters is working with the Environmental Voter Project, and they are looking to try to get Wisconsin voters who are environmentally involved but not voting out to vote. And that's been something our chapters have been working on since the spring. The story of our chapter, our startup group began in June of 2013. I happened to meet Madeline Para, who started the Madison, Wisconsin chapter at a conference in Madison. She had gone on to be the vice president of CCL programming as well as the executive director before she retired recently. And now she's, again, very, very involved in Wisconsin CCL work. Our chapter currently has several hundred followers through our email information that we send out. We have a core group of participants, and we're looking forward to our September meeting, when many times we have participants from universities come to us, whether it's UW La Crosse or Viterbo. We meet monthly, virtually and in person on the fourth Wednesday of each month. Occasionally, we end up doing just virtually open or only, but we're looking to try to bring that together where we have in person at the same time. And for those that wanted information, you can just email info@lacrosseccl.org. And again, CCL has many online resources. Just their website, citizensclimatelobby.org, is open to anyone. Community with citizensclimatelobby.org, you register for that, but there's no special process. They just allow you to go in and create a username and password, and then you have access to all those materials. They have a great YouTube channel with past conference speakers, trainings. Each one of the monthly meetings are recorded and put out for folks. And then Citizens Climate Lobby Wisconsin has its own website. So if you're interested specifically in things that chapters in Wisconsin are doing, you can go to that website. And that's it for my presentation.
Thank you very much, Larry. And I've got questions brewing for sure. Tamara, I want to invite you into the conversation, and just, start off with what do you have to add to this?
Yeah, well, thank you, Larry. I have to say, every time I see a CCL presentation, especially those that include Marshall, I feel very proud to be a part of CCL. I'm proud and grateful. So I've been with CCL almost about as long as Larry has. 2012 is when I got involved with the Portland CCL Oregon chapter, and I actually helped to co-found that chapter. And I worked as a volunteer for a number of years until I was invited to be a volunteer regional coordinator back when regional coordinators were volunteers. And then anyway, over the years, worked my way into a couple of staff positions. So, and I'm really grateful for those positions. So I love getting to work with volunteers. Particularly, I specifically work with volunteers mostly in my region, in the greater Pacific Northwest region, which includes 5 states, Alaska, Hawaii, Oregon, Washington, and Idaho. And we also have 3 Pacific Island territories in our region. So I just am so inspired by the work that volunteers like Larry are doing on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis. It's so inspiring and motivating for me to see how committed people are. I don't know if you had a chance. I didn't hear this story, Larry, about the specifics of the postcarding, that people are spending hundreds, even thousands of dollars in a chapter on their own stamps because they're really committed to being able to make a difference on postcarding efforts for the Environmental Voter Project, but also for campaigns like in Washington State, where we're working on a campaign, No on 2117, which is trying to overturn the current carbon pricing mechanism in Washington State. So volunteers by the thousands. I think we've had 40,000 postcards written so far just by CCL volunteers. So it's really a powerful opportunity for me to be able to be in the role of regional director and getting to work with volunteer state coordinators, volunteer group leaders, volunteer liaisons who are just so committed to this effort. And the other role that I love is getting to play is the resilience and education coordinator role on staff. And in that role, I really get to focus on helping volunteers who are working on one of the most intense issues of our time to stay strong and steady in the work that they are doing on climate change, because it's not an easy topic. It's obviously, it goes without saying that it can feel pretty heavy if you let in the feels, which I sometimes I don't, because I got to keep on going, right? But it's pretty intense topic. And so my goal as resilience coordinator, and this is a focus on personal resilience. There's community building, resilience building efforts, of course, but my role specifically in CCL is to help people do the personal work so that they can avoid burnout and really keep going. And so I do things like gathering resources and putting them into a particular hub, which we call the Resilience Hub. And I can drop the link into the chat later and share it in the recording, in the newsletter. And then I also present webinars, like one I'm doing next week, Tuesday at 5 Pacific. I guess that'd be 7 Central, navigating climate and election anxiety. And so just being able to think about what are our volunteers potentially struggling with, what would help them to be able to lean in even more and longer. But because people like Larry, I mean, it's impressive, Larry, when I hear that you're a volunteer and you've been doing this for, I think you said 10 years, maybe 11. You're so well spoken. You do such a fabulous job of representing this organization that I think a lot of us who are in the organization, we love it. And because it for me, like what I love about CCL is in part the people, people like Larry, people like the volunteers that I work with, people who have come to climate camp that you know Casey and I worked on together. We've run 2 climate camps, and again, it's just an opportunity for people to come together and stay strong and steady in their work. And where was I going? I was talking about the people, what I love, and I also love just the relationships with those people, but also I've never felt like I needed to be somebody else or needed to be better or know something different or that I wasn't good enough to be a part of CCL. And I just feel like the values are so aligned with my values that it's felt like such a fit. I don't often stay with organizations for as long as I have. So I'll stop there and pass it back to you, Casey, because it sounds
Yeah.
like you have additional questions for us.
Yeah, well, that was actually I'll pay you for this later. Like that was a perfect lead into my question, actually. You were talking a little bit about what excites you about CCL, what's kept you there for, a dozen years now. Larry, I'm interested in that same question to you. You've been at this now for, over 10 years. Why have you stayed with CCL that long, that number of years?
Well, I would agree with Tamara. The people, it's to be able to meet monthly with folks that share your concern, share your interests, are also doing their own research and sharing that. I had the opportunity to attend the June Washington conference prior to the pandemic. And when you have over 1,000 people together in a conference, big giant conference room, very energized, planning lobby meetings, states having all of their chapter leaders and members come together to talk about that, presentations, films, other things that are going on. It's you come away very energized. And whether it's regional conferences or it's just the local meetings, I think that's the people are definitely one of the most important things. The opportunity to lobby your legislators. I mean, there's nothing, if you've never lobbied on Congress on the Hill, I would highly encourage, whether it's through CCL or some other organization, the idea to be there where legislation is made, in Washington, working with the staff and legislators. I think that's just an awesome experience. And again, CCL does an amazing job of preparing a lobby team to do that effectively, respectfully. And I think I had mentioned once before, one of the things, a lobby team is divided up with various duties. It could be someone that's going to introduce the group, someone that will ask, how much time do we have and be the timekeeper, someone that will, thank the legislator or, staff for the things that they have been doing already, those that may bring an action or primary ask or secondary ask forward as to what they would like the legislator to work on or co-sponsor or sponsor, and then a follow-up. So you divide that up into the team. And I have been on lobby meetings where you'll go in and you'll say, well, how much time do we have? Well, you have 15 minutes. And of course, you're moving to condense things. But then you find out that 15 minutes has gone by, 20 minutes has gone by, you're out to half an hour, and the legislator is sitting there really interested in what you're saying and asking questions. So I think CCL does a really good job of presenting things, again, respectfully, knowledgeably, and many times legislators are happy to speak to CCL teams because Other times they've spoken to lobby groups that were not respectful or, very aggressive or antagonistic. And that wears on anyone, including your staff member or a legislator. But if you can do that on a regular basis and build that, relationship, I think that's where CCL really succeeds with relationships, whether it's with lobbying or within CCL chapters or CCL in general. It's just, it's an amazing group of people. And with challenging times with climate, I think it's really important to have like-minded people to go ahead and bounce ideas in, share your concerns, share your victories, and celebrate the little things that you're able to accomplish.
So I think that that idea of celebrating the little things, right, that you're able to accomplish, that to me calls to mind something that both of you brought up about just positivity and CCL being focused on optimism rather than doom and gloom. And that's something that's really, as both of you know, that's pretty near and dear to my heart as well. So could you say a little bit more about that? Why did CCL maybe go down this route of being more positive, or what exactly are they doing that's lending people to take a more positive approach to climate change rather than going down the doom trail?
Well, at least from my perspective, and I think in many things that you do, if you go into it with a downcast, depressed attitude, you're really not going to move forward very well. It's easy to bring yourself down, raise anxiety levels and all of that. CCL has always been looking for optimism, even in very challenging times. I believe I have heard in the past, again, I had mentioned the 2016 election. I think at that time, there was a lot of enthusiasm prior to the election with things moving forward. And it was said at one of the meetings afterward, it said that we were really moving, we had uphill, but we're moving, but now we've basically come to a cliff. So everything's going to slow down, but we're not going to stop. We're going to keep working our way up to the top of that cliff, and try to make progress. And I think that's, again, how CCL volunteers and the organization as a whole really looks that, we have, again, celebrations for some victories, and we definitely have had some. But there are challenges as well. And we find that to try to work through those challenges, work around them, work over them, however you need to do, but you work it as a team. And again, through that diversity of volunteers and perspectives and approaches. And we're really starting to get more young people involved, which is amazing because I feel the young volunteers just bring so much enthusiasm, so many new ideas. I'm excited to see that. I'm always excited when we have volunteers from our local universities come join us because they're excited to hear what we have to say. We have that historic perspective, but they also bring that idea that they are the ones that are going to be feeling this the most. Folks that are older may not be around here when the, potentially more dire situations they can encounter. So they want to move things forward and they have that drive and that goal to do that. So I think that's why optimism really overshadows any negativity that CCL has.
How about you, Tamara? Same question.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is that CCL was modeled after Marshall, and Marshall was one of the most optimistic people I've ever met. Just such a huge heart. And so I don't necessarily know that Marshall did it out of any scientific backed reason. I think he also modeled it after results. So I haven't I was tempted to look at the results values and see if they also have optimism in their values lineup. But what I know from being with CCL for 12 years is that optimism makes a huge difference. And I know there's a ton of data. I'm not a numbers person, I'm a people person, so I can't quote the data right here in the moment, but the benefit of optimism and positivity on the brain's ability to respond and to think outside the box and to connect. I mean, I was actually just preparing that presentation for Tuesday on climate and election anxiety. And when we consider our interior, polyvagal nerve, for example, like its ability to be able to help us stay grounded and access our true or our highest self, like it's in that place that optimism lives. And that's when we have most access to our upper brain, lower brain, left brain, right brain. And when our brain is integrated, that's when we're firing all pistons, so to speak, perhaps an ancient metaphor, right? But that's when we can be our best selves and do our best climate work and be able to come up with creative climate solutions that we clearly all need.
Got it. Thank you. And yeah, instead of firing on all pistons, maybe, and turning all electro servos or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Some non-carbon based, right?
Right. Plug in all induction burners.
There we go. So I know the barrier for entry into CCL to get involved is pretty low. You know, there's not a fee to get involved or anything. We can just show up. Volunteers can show up. Larry, just quickly, where if somebody locally here in the Seven Rivers region wants to join CCL, there's I know you shared the info email, but in general, what would that look like? They would show up in a meeting on a Wednesday and what?
Well, many times CCL likes potential new members to go ahead to their Wednesday intro meeting that they have. And leaders that if there's someone in a region that learns about CCL outside of talking to our chapter members, you know, and contact CCL, they'll ask them to go to that Wednesday introduction meeting. It's virtual. And then they take that information if they are in your, you know, chapter region and send it to a chapter leader. I'll receive that. And then we reach out to them and also include them on our email list about the upcoming meetings, you know, whether it's virtually or in person. And it's for volunteers, so much of it comes down to really making, again, that personal connection. You know, sometimes volunteers are very interested, but don't have a lot of time. They may have a family, but they would like to, you know, sit in on a meeting virtually or some meetings. And other folks may have a fair amount of time. They may have resources. So again, as Tamara mentioned, when it came to postcarding, where you end up getting postcards, you fill them out personally and stamp them and send them off to try to encourage people to get out and vote who, you know, had been environmentally involved. You know, they may have time for that. They may have the resources for that. So there's all kinds of information that they would learn at that meeting. If they come to us directly, we will definitely give them an overview, introduce them at our monthly meeting, answer their questions initially, give them an overview of the things that we're working on. We ask the monthly meeting for CCL, the international meeting, is on the second Saturday of the month. We actually meet on the fourth Wednesday of the month. We don't meet during the chapter meeting live or the international meeting live. We had done that initially. We just found that many people wanted to have their weekend free. And if you actually watch the meeting, many times that's about 45 minutes. So we have people watch the recording of the meeting ahead of time so we can talk about that. We talk about the actions. We have introductions as any new members. We talk about events locally that are happening, and we share those. You know, some people may know about things happening locally related to something CCL would be interested in. We have that. And we share other pieces of news and actions, celebrations that we have about upcoming events. If we're tabling, if somebody publishes a letter to the editor or an op-ed, we do that. So we really try to get folks involved. And as I had mentioned, we're excited with the school year starting to have young folks. I've also had the opportunity to mentor several students from UWL who ended up getting very interested in Citizens Climate Lobby. They went through a training and certification for that. They ended up coming to our meetings. They did a class presentation. And I found that very rewarding to talk to someone who got interested in climate change or the environment, wanted to figure out how they could make a difference and learn more. And CCL, through a mentorship opportunity, was a way for them to do that. And I feel if we can pass that on, several of the students that I've worked with, one is going on to environmental journalism, another one is going on to a nonprofit related to the environment. So if we can help young people move that forward, give them a few more skills and more information, I think that's just incredible opportunity.
And Tamara, I know you had mentioned, again, thinking about involvement, you mentioned, or maybe it was Larry that mentioned, but there's a couple of conferences coming up that are national. There's the Inclusion Conference, right, in September, and the Fall Conference in December.
Yeah.
Can you just say a little bit about who can go to those, and what will they expect, or what could they expect?
Yeah, anybody and everybody is welcome. I was actually in a meeting on a call the other day with one of the people who's on the committee planning the inclusion conference, and he said it's an inclusion conference, so that includes everybody, not just brown people. It doesn't exclude white people. So everybody is welcome to go to the inclusion conference. It's a fantastic way to understand one of our key core values, diversity, and how we as an organization are intentional about including everybody, the importance of including everybody, and some of the specifics of our inclusion work as an organization. So that is a Friday evening and a Saturday in September 21st.
That's virtual?
Yeah, that's online.
Okay.
Yep. The fall conference is also online. So like Larry said, we have one in-person conference a year actually next year's in July in DC, but our fall conference is online, open to anybody. It's free. And it's a fantastic way to get to know the organization, or to be able to involve yourself, engage more deeply if you are already involved. But there are sessions on all of our policy areas, so including fee and dividend, healthy forest, building electrification and efficiency, and permitting reform. I haven't seen the lineup. They're still working on the lineup of the fall conference, but it is a fantastic introduction to CCL, as well as a way to dive deeper into our policy areas. And it's a really great way to come together also with people. In years past, we have had specific breakout rooms for states to be able to be in those rooms together. I'm not sure what's happening this year, but yeah, it's excellent. And if you register and you can't attend at all, or you can only attend a few sessions, the whole thing is recorded. And so that's a nice way to register and then have the links in your inbox.
Sounds good. Thank you. And one final question here for both of you, and that is, who is someone currently working on or writing about or speaking about climate that we should know about?
Well, I early on, I mentioned Bill McKibben, writing The End of Nature. Bill McKibben several years ago started the Third Act. So that's for folks that are older, like 60 and above. I'm not sure if there's any true limit, but he felt that older folks have time and resources and the ability to put their efforts forward as well to enact climate change. So that's one I would definitely recommend. Bill writes regularly. He also writes for the New Yorker and other publications. So he's someone that I would recommend following. And the Third Act is someone that an organization you can definitely get involved with.
And I would chime in with Katharine Hayhoe. She's one of my favorites. Her personality is just so gregarious and lighthearted, and she's a climate scientist who lives in the most conservative town in the United States, Lubbock, Texas, but she's Canadian. And she has a fantastic YouTube series called Global Weirding, and I'm just looking at her website, and there's all sorts of fantastic resources there as well. So Katharine Hayhoe.
And I think the other thing that's very interesting about Katharine Hayhoe is she is very religious, and so she's able to speak about climate using a lens that sometimes we don't hear about, and speak to people who in a sort of a novel way, right, that we don't often hear scientists speaking.
Married somebody I don't remember his exact position, but a very religious man who didn't necessarily believe in human caused climate change. And so she's shared stories about her experience in her marriage, which I believe is still together. I know it was when she did a lot of writing about that experience of hers. So she wrote Saving Us as one book where she talks about the importance of just talking about climate. And Catherine talks about how climate change is everyone's problem, even though they don't necessarily know that it is yet, because every problem that anybody has is directly related to climate change in some way. They just don't necessarily see that connection yet.
And I think with Catherine Hayhoe, she's also presented a keynote speaker at CCL conferences. And yeah, she has a great approach. She often said one of the first things you can do with climate change is talk about it, as was mentioned here. It's just so important that if we don't talk about it, if we don't share our experiences, our stories, our concerns, that just stays pent up, and we're not letting that out and getting that conversation and raising awareness. So she's very, very much on that.
And that is one simple thing that everybody could do that's listening to this call, is just start talking about climate change. And that's one of the things that Catherine says is, if we don't talk about it, then people think it's not important, because we talk about the things that are important. We don't just shove them under the rug. Well, we might try, but when we talk about climate change, it gets out there, and there's all sorts of data that talks about how people think that few people are concerned about it, but people are, like, the majority of people are concerned about climate change. So bringing it up can often feel like a relief to the person that you're bringing it up with.
Right. I believe the latest numbers I saw were, I believe it's over 6 in 10 Americans are at least somewhat concerned about climate.
Yeah.
So, right. So, but yet we don't talk about it, right? And so everyone's concerned, but nobody thinks that anyone is, because we haven't normalized that conversation yet. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, Larry and Tamara, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your knowledge about Citizens Climate Lobby. It's been great. And I would encourage anyone who listens to this sustainability chat to check out Citizens Climate Lobby. Check out your local chapter, what we're doing here in La Crosse or anywhere else in the Seven Rivers region. Check out the national organization as well. See what they're up to. There's a ton of resources on their website, and we'll be sure to get you those links as well, so you can see, so you can easily connect in with them. Thank you again, Larry and Tamara. Thank you for your time, and thanks for all the work that you're doing. It's important work. It sounds like it's fun work, and you're leading the way. So thank you.
To stay connected with the Sustainability Institute and stay aware of upcoming events, head on over to our website to join our mailing list. Once again, we want to thank you for watching this Sustainability Chat. We hope to see you soon.